Hello everyone and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Have you ever wondered what really happens behind the closed doors of a psychiatric hospital? These aren't simple stories. They're terrifying testimonies told by psychiatric nurses who have witnessed things that can't be explained. Get ready for 5 unsettling horror stories set inside mental hospitals. Stories that will keep haunting your mind long after the video ends. There's a kind of calm you expect to find in a psychiatric ward. At least that's what you think. Until you feel the true weight of the place. When you step through those doors, you mentally brace yourself for chaos, constant tension, unease. But there are other moments too. Moments that feel different. Moments of silence. Instants where everything seems to stop and the world becomes strangely still. That's how it was with Olivia. Olivia had been hospitalized with us for months. She was a nonverbal patient, one of the most enigmatic people I had ever met in my entire career. Her history was long and complicated. We knew she had suffered trauma, yes, but beyond that, our information was minimal. She had remained silent for as long as anyone could remember. She never spoke, never answered questions or followed commands. She didn't interact with anyone in any meaningful way. And yet she was also calm, in a way that felt disturbing. Most of the time, Olivia sat in her chair, staring at the wall with those pale, unreadable eyes. It was impossible to know what was going through her mind. She gave the impression of being in her own world, completely disconnected from everything around her. Nurses came and went, making their rounds, checking her condition, but Olivia didn't require much. She wasn't dangerous. She didn't cause problems. Over time, I got used to her silent presence, just like the rest of the staff. It was as if we had all quietly accepted that she was simply there. We didn't expect anything from her, and in return, she didn't demand anything from us. But all of that changed one night. It was a Tuesday night like any other. I was finishing my rounds when I reached Olivia's room. I had gone through the other rooms without noticing anything out of the ordinary. The usual, some patients asleep, others calmly continuing their nighttime routines. But when I stepped into Olivia's room, something felt different. At first, I thought she was asleep. Her eyes were closed, her body still. But when I moved a little closer, I noticed something that made my heart stop for a second. Her lips were moving. I froze in the doorway, unsure whether I should step forward or not. Olivia had never spoken. Not once. Not a word. Not a sound. And now she was whispering something under her breath. Something I couldn't make out. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked closer slowly. I had never seen her like this. I leaned in slightly, trying to understand what she was saying. Then with absolute clarity, Olivia's voice echoed through the room. But it wasn't her voice. It was deep, rough, completely different from the soft tone I had always imagined for her. The words sounded strange, like they were coming from somewhere far away, and there was something about that voice that didn't fit. Something that didn't belong in her body. Tick-tock. Your time is almost up. I stepped back immediately. My heart was pounding and my hands went cold. I didn't know what to think. Was it a hallucination? A side effect of medication? I stood there, frozen. Then Olivia opened her eyes and looked straight at me. Her gaze was intense, but her face remained blank, calm. She didn't seem like the same person. There was something in her eyes, something that made it feel like she knew more than she should. "I know," she said, in that same voice. "The end is close for you. And for him." I was stunned. Who was she talking about? Another nurse? Me? I couldn't answer. I couldn't say anything. Olivia kept staring at me, her expression impossible to read. Then she spoke again. "Tomorrow, the phone call. It will change everything." After that, she went silent again. She closed her eyes. Her body relaxed as if nothing had happened. I stood in the doorway, unable to process what I had just witnessed. Was it a delusional episode? A brief break from reality? Or had something deeper happened? Something unexplainable? I left the room completely shaken, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. Nurses hear strange things sometimes, don't they? I tried to dismiss it as an anomaly, a one-time moment. But the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. Tick-tock. Your time is almost up. The end is close for you and for him. The phone call. I couldn't forget the way she said it, the certainty in her voice. The day went on normally. I did my rounds like always, trying to convince myself it had all been in my head. Until just as Olivia had predicted, the phone rang. It was the call I had been dreading. The call I prayed I would never receive. It was from home. My mother had been fighting cancer for months, and even though I had prepared myself for the worst, the moment I saw the number on the screen, I knew exactly what it meant. The voice on the other end confirmed my fears. My mother had passed away. The impact was devastating. The pain, the grief, the sudden loss, it all crashed down on me at once. But in the middle of that heartbreak, I couldn't ignore the fact that Olivia had anticipated it. She had said it the night before with that strange voice. The phone call will change everything. I didn't know how or why, but I couldn't deny it had happened exactly the way she said it would. Days passed, and the memory of that prediction kept circling my mind. But the most unsettling part happened weeks later. During shift change, another nurse, Jenna, came up to me. Olivia spoke to me last night, she whispered, almost like she didn't believe it herself. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then she kept going. She told me things no one could possibly know. Jenna paused. Her eyes were wide. She said, "The child will be lost. You'll have to say goodbye before the year ends." I didn't understand right away. Until that same morning, everything clicked. Jenna swallowed as she spoke. "I just found out my sister is pregnant. She's had complications, and the doctors say they don't know if the baby will survive." I stayed quiet, trying to take it in. Jenna's face had gone pale. Fear was written all over her eyes, the same fear I had felt. We had been caught in the web of Olivia's predictions. After that, more strange things began to happen. All the nurses started having similar experiences. Olivia said things, comments that were impossible to explain, and over time, more of her predictions began to come true. They were too specific, too real, impossible to ignore. No one could understand how. How could a nonverbal patient, someone who had never spoken a single word, talk with such clarity? How could she know things about our futures before we even knew them ourselves? As the weeks passed, Olivia's predictions continued. Some were cryptic, others were direct. And with every one that came true, the fear grew. We couldn't explain it, but we couldn't deny it either. Even now, as I tell this story, I can still hear her voice echoing in my mind. Tick-tock. Your time is almost up. I don't know what Olivia was, or where what she knew came from. But one thing is clear. When she spoke, we listened. And maybe she wasn't speaking only to us. Maybe she was speaking from somewhere beyond. Hello, friends. Thanks for watching the video. A special thank you to our subscribers. You keep these unsettling stories alive. But here's the thing. Only 30% of the people watching our videos are subscribed. If you enjoy our content, subscribing helps more than you can imagine. It only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference. And don't forget to hit like and share, so the chills keep coming. Thanks again. This is possible because of you. See you in the next one, if you dare. Story 2. It was a completely normal day, or at least it seemed that way. The hospital, like any other, moved to its own rhythm. Nurses walking the hallways, doctors checking on patients, and the constant hum of equipment marking the passage of time. In a place like that, routine is what you expect. People come and go, treatments begin and end, and there's always a sense of stability, order, familiarity. But sometimes in the places where we least expect it, that feeling of safety breaks. It all started with whispers, small comments, almost unnoticed at first. No one paid much attention. But as the days went by, the stories multiplied. Patients, staff members, even visitors. Everyone was talking about her. The nurse who looked exactly like Eunice. At first it seemed harmless, almost funny. "I just saw Eunice in the hallway," a doctor would say. "That can't be," a nurse would respond, shaking her head. "I just talked to her. She's in the break room." And yet the rumor wouldn't go away. It wasn't until a few days later that we started noticing something didn't add up. The first incident happened during a morning round. Eunice was with her assigned patients on the 3rd floor when a night shift nurse mentioned she had seen her on the 2nd floor, talking to someone near the elevator. But when the team went to check, Eunice was still on the 3rd floor. "I swear I saw her," the nurse insisted. "I thought she was on break or something." But Eunice wasn't on break. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, and the nurse had been alone on the 2nd floor. A week passed and the story spread even more. Staff walking the halls started noticing the same thing, a nurse identical to Eunice, always showing up in places where she shouldn't be. These were no longer isolated sightings. They saw her at the most unexpected moments. Eunice walking down the hallway right when a patient mentioned her, even though she wasn't actually there. Another time, someone claimed they bumped into her inside the elevator. But when they stepped out on their floor, there was absolutely no one there. I remember the first time I heard all this. I thought it was a joke, an exaggerated rumor that had grown out of control. But then, I started seeing her too. One night as I was finishing my rounds, I saw her. That nurse. She was standing in the hallway looking over a folder. She had Eunice's face, her posture, even her uniform. Everything was identical. I walked closer. When she looked up and smiled, I felt something didn't fit. "Eunice?" I asked, even though I knew she was supposed to be on another floor. She looked at me, her smile never fading. "I'm just checking a few things," she said. And without adding anything else, she turned around and walked down the hallway. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The whole situation was unsettling. I went back to Eunice's usual station, and there she was, exactly where I had left her, talking with a patient in the next room. I'm not a superstitious person. I don't usually imagine things or exaggerate what I see. But the coincidences kept piling up. There were too many to explain away as simple mistakes or confusion. I've worked here long enough to know when someone is where they shouldn't be. I decided to bring it up to the head nurse. She just shrugged. "These things happen," she said. "Stress can mess with you. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're seeing things." But that explanation didn't convince me. Nurses don't get confused like that. We're trained to know who is where and what everyone is doing. And the most unsettling part was that Eunice was the one who had seen that other version of herself the most. The double. Eunice was the first to see her clearly, late one night in the hallway. "It's like she's following me," she told me, her voice trembling. I turned around, and there she was, just standing there. At first she thought she had imagined it, but she swore that figure looked exactly like her. At the time, no one else saw it. But the next morning, when I returned to Eunice's unit, the atmosphere was different. There was tension in the air. Everyone seemed nervous, like they were waiting to see her again. The strange one wearing Eunice's face. Days turned into weeks, and there were no answers. The nurse, the doppelganger, kept showing up at the most random times, sometimes in the middle of chaotic, busy shifts, other times in the eerie silence of early morning. And just when you thought you could forget about it, there she was again, watching, smiling. But the strangest thing, the thing that truly ate at me, was that no one could ever catch her. She always disappeared before anyone could get close. No one knew where she went. And every time anyone asked Eunice, she said the same thing. "I've never been in that part of the hospital," she would say. "How could it be me?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I've been here the whole time. I can't be in two places at once." Patients started seeing her too. At first they were confused, then some became anxious, even angry. An older woman had a particularly disturbing experience. She swore the nurse who had been caring for her all week, Eunice according to her, had come into her room in the middle of the night and whispered things to her in a voice that didn't sound quite normal. But when she told me, Eunice hadn't been anywhere near that room. As the days went by, the staff grew more and more unsettled. The doppelganger seemed to be everywhere, always just out of reach, always one step away from being discovered. I don't know if that nurse was ever real, or if she was only a creation of our collective minds, a reflection, an echo, a ghost walking the halls of a place that already felt haunted. All I know is this. Sometimes in the quietest corners of our minds we see things that don't make sense, things that shouldn't be there. And no matter how hard we try to convince ourselves otherwise, we can never quite shake the feeling that something isn't right. Sometimes even when you think you're in control, even when you believe you understand exactly what's happening, there are mysteries that will never be solved. Some things, like the doppelganger nurse, will simply remain out of reach. Maybe we were never meant to understand them. Hey, you made it this far, but the story isn't over yet. The shadows are still whispering and the truth is buried much deeper than you think. If you stop now, you'll never know what's hiding right after the next click. The next story is waiting for you. Watch it now before she's watching you. Story 3. In the deep silence of the night, when the hospital was almost completely asleep, the air was filled with the constant hum of machines and the occasional drag of footsteps in the hallways. It was a time when the outside world felt distant, irrelevant, and everything inside those walls felt muted, dimmed. The rooms, the patients, the routines, all of it blended into a soft, steady rhythm. But then there was Jacob. Jacob had been with us for a while. He was a man of few words, always quiet, always withdrawn. He didn't talk much. In fact, he almost never talked. He used to sit by the window, watching the streetlights with a distant expression, as if he were trapped in a world of his own that he couldn't, or didn't want to, leave. His doctors had tried everything: therapy, medication, even a few alternative treatments. Nothing seemed to change the fact that Jacob had shut down completely. He didn't interact with anyone, not with the staff, not with other patients. He simply existed. Over time, I had gotten used to his silence. I had even developed a kind of protective instinct toward him. There was something about Jacob that made you want to take care of him. Something fragile, like a bird with a broken wing. He didn't seem dangerous, but he carried a deep sadness that no one could reach. Until one night, everything changed. It was around 3 in the morning when it happened. I remember the time perfectly because I was doing my rounds and the hallways were motionless, steeped in an unsettling calm. Most of the patients were asleep, and the staff were spread out on their breaks. As I passed Jacob's room, I noticed something strange. The door was cracked open, and the light inside flickered in a way that made me stop. I stepped in carefully, and then I heard it. Laughter. At first it was soft, a low kind of chuckle, but it didn't sound like normal laughter. It was uneven, broken, almost manic, like someone was forcing it out, or like it came from somewhere too deep to reach. I stood still for a moment, trying to understand what I was hearing. When I looked at Jacob, I saw him sitting up in bed, his head thrown back, his mouth open, laughing uncontrollably. It wasn't laughter from joy or amusement. It was disturbing. "Jacob," I called, my voice cutting through the tension in the air. "Jacob, what's wrong?" He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on a corner of the room. His body shook with each burst of laughter, but the sound was hollow, empty. Nothing was funny. Nothing had changed. The room looked exactly the same as it had hours earlier. I moved a little closer, trying to get his attention. "Jacob, stop. What's happening?" He didn't look at me. His gaze stayed fixed on that same corner, as if something or someone was there, just outside my line of sight. And then, in the middle of his hysterical laughter, he spoke. His voice was low, barely a whisper, but the meaning was unmistakable. "He's right behind you." A chill ran through my entire body. The hair on the back of my neck stood up instantly. I turned on instinct, expecting to see someone, whatever it was he was pointing at. But the room was empty. It was just Jacob and me. I looked back at him, my heart pounding. He was still laughing, the sound bouncing off the small walls of the room. But there was something different in his eyes, a kind of chaos I had never seen in him before. "Jacob," I said, trying to stay calm, searching for a rational explanation. "Who are you talking about? Who's behind me?" He didn't respond. For a moment his laughter faded, but it returned almost immediately. Louder this time, like something was making him laugh against his will. I backed away slowly, looking around again. There was nothing. No figure, no shadow, nothing that explained his words. But the atmosphere had changed. The air felt thick, heavy, charged with something I couldn't define. "Jacob," I repeated, my voice shaking. "Please, tell me what you see. Who's behind me?" For several seconds, Jacob didn't say anything. His laughter died down, but the tension in his face remained. Then, in a voice so low I could barely hear it, he said something that ran down my spine like ice. "He's always here. He's always behind me." I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to calm him down, comfort him, ease his fear. But I was terrified too. My mind was scrambling for answers. Had Jacob had some kind of breakdown? Was it the medication? Or had something else taken control of him? His words kept echoing in my head. "He's always here. He's always behind me." I called for backup. Within minutes, the doctor and 2 other nurses arrived. They tried to calm Jacob, but no one could explain what was happening. Little by little, his laughter faded, but he kept staring at the corner of the room. His body stiff, his eyes wide open, as if he were trapped in a world we couldn't see. The rest of the night passed in a blur. We kept him under constant observation. But after that, Jacob didn't say another word. He just sat in silence, staring at the empty corner of his room, as if he were waiting for something or someone to return. In the days that followed, we did everything we could to help him. More therapy sessions, medication adjustments, new attempts at communication. Nothing worked. Jacob never spoke again. He never laughed again. He never made a sound again. He simply sat in his room watching the corner, as if he were waiting for someone to step out of the shadows. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know what Jacob saw. I don't know who or what was behind me. I tried to convince myself it was all the result of his mental state, a hallucination, a side effect of the medication. But a part of me will never forget that moment. The way he looked at me, the way he laughed, the way he said those words. "He's right behind you." Maybe there are things we're not meant to understand. Maybe on certain nights, in the quiet corners of our minds, we see things others can't see. And maybe Jacob wasn't the only one who saw it. Story 4. Hospitals are strange places by nature. Within their walls, life and death, pain and hope all exist under the same roof. We witness things every day that many people never have to face. Silent battles, unexpected recoveries, and goodbyes that break your heart. But there are also moments in these places, moments impossible to explain, moments that can make even the most experienced nurse stop in her tracks. I never thought I would be one of those nurses. I never believed the day would come when I'd hesitate before opening a door, or feel a chill crawl up my spine without knowing exactly why. But there's a room here, room 312, that changed all of that. Room 312 had been empty for weeks, or at least that's what we told ourselves. But in reality, it was never empty. Not in the way you expect it to be. It started with the lights. At first, they only flickered once in a while, nothing alarming. Something easy to blame on an electrical issue or faulty wiring. But it always happened at the exact same moment. Right when you were standing in front of the door, about to walk in, the lights would dim as if warning you not to enter, and then they would return to normal. Over time, the flickering became more frequent, too precise, too perfectly timed, and then it wasn't so easy to ignore anymore. Then there was the call bell. In that part of the wing, we had a few patients, but not in room 312. The patient who had been in that bed had died several weeks earlier. We were told it was a peaceful death, nothing out of the ordinary. But that damn call bell. It rang at random hours, almost always when no one was nearby. It rang again and again, insistent, like someone on the other side was desperate to get your attention. And every time you ran to check, the room was completely silent, empty. The bell would stop the moment you opened the door, like it had been waiting for you. At first, the newer nurses thought it was a prank, some kind of cruel game. Lori, a sweet girl but easily frightened, was the first one to go into the room alone after hearing the bell. She was convinced someone was messing with her. She thought maybe the cleaning staff had left the bell activated by accident. But when she stepped through the doorway, the lights flickered. Not a quick flash, but a slow, deliberate blackout, like the room was trying to tell her something. Lori froze at the entrance. Her eyes scanned the room nervously. "I'm sure I heard it," she told me later. "The bell, and then the light. It was like someone was in there watching me." She never went back into that room, and it wasn't just Lori. Other nurses began reporting strange things, objects moving on their own. A chair in the corner that no one had touched would appear pushed back, as if someone had stood up and walked away. A book on the side table that hadn't moved in days would be found open one morning, like someone had been reading it. They were small details, things you could try to explain if you really wanted to, but it was always the same. No one had been in there. No one had touched anything. No one had moved a single thing. I'll never forget the night it happened to me. It was late, around 2 in the morning. I was doing my rounds, counting the minutes until the night shift ended so I could go home. I had passed room 312 several times, like always, without noticing anything out of the ordinary. But this time the door was slightly open. The lights flickered when I walked past. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but enough to make me stop. I kept walking. It wasn't the first time I'd seen it. Then the call bell rang. I went completely still. At first it was a soft sound, a low chime, like someone far away was asking for help. My instinct was to run and check on the patients in the nearby rooms to make sure everything was okay. But I couldn't move. Something about that sound, something about the way the bell echoed, made me hesitate. Who could be in there? I had to know. I walked toward the door slowly, carefully. The light flickered again, and for a second I thought I saw something. Just a shadow, maybe. But it was enough to speed up my heartbeat. I opened the door. The room was empty, completely empty. And still, something wasn't right. The bell had stopped ringing, but the silence felt oppressive, heavy. I looked around and then I saw it. A small object on the floor. A medication bottle that hours earlier had been perfectly placed on the nightstand. Now it was on the floor, rolled several feet away. I crouched down to pick it up, my mind racing. How had it gotten there? I was sure no one had moved it. I stood up and looked around the room. The chair was still in the same place. The bed. No one had slept in it for weeks. And yet it was warm, like someone had just gotten up. The sheets were untouched, but there was something unsettling in that stillness. I felt the urge to look over my shoulder. Everything in me was telling me to leave, but I didn't. I stayed. I don't know how long I stood there. It felt like minutes, maybe hours. The air inside the room was thick, heavier than the air in the hallway. And then, like a signal, the call bell rang again. I turned sharply. Nothing had changed. The room was still empty, silent. I don't know why I stayed that night. I don't know what I expected to find, but I could feel it clearly. Something was in there. I wasn't alone in that room. The next morning I found myself at the nurse's station, avoiding getting close to 312 again. Lori was there too. At first, we didn't say anything. We just stared at the computer screen, pretending we hadn't lived through the same thing. After a long silence, she whispered, "Did you hear it last night?" I nodded, unable to say a single word. The bell, the strange stillness, the feeling of being watched. After that, we made a silent pact. No one would ever enter room 312 alone. Never again. The strange things didn't stop. The lights kept flickering. The call bell kept ringing. Objects kept moving for no reason. But no one talked about it. No one admitted they were afraid. We didn't want to face it. We didn't want to know what was really happening in that room. All we knew was that after the patient died, after the bed was left empty, something stayed behind. Something we couldn't explain. And some nights when the hallways are quiet and the air turns heavy, you can still hear the call bell, ringing again and again, as if someone somewhere is still waiting for someone to answer. Maybe the room was never as empty as we thought. Story 5. Inside the walls of a hospital, lives can change forever. Some people leave exactly the same as they came in. Others walk out with a new reality, for better or worse. In a place like this, you learn to expect the unexpected. But even the most experienced nurse can be caught off guard. That's exactly what happened to me. I got tangled up in something I couldn't explain. Something that made me question everything I thought I knew about this place. It started quietly, almost unnoticed. My shifts had been long, as usual, but there was one patient who made my days feel different. His name was Thomas. Thomas had been admitted for several weeks. He was a young man in his late 20s, struggling with severe anxiety and episodes of hallucinations. Despite his condition, he never struck me as dangerous. He was quiet, withdrawn, and would spend hours staring out the window. He didn't talk much. In fact, he almost never talked. I had seen him a few times in passing like any other patient on the wing, but something about him started to stand out. Not in a way that felt unsettling at first, but like a puzzle that slowly begins to reveal its pieces. Every time I went into his room to check on him, something caught my attention. Something that hadn't been there the night before. It started with the wall. A small scribble, almost invisible at first. At a glance, it looked like nothing more than a smudge. But when I got closer, I realized it wasn't just a random mark. It was writing. Small rush strokes as if someone had grabbed a pen and quickly written in a corner where no one would look twice. At first, I ignored it. I figured it had been a mistake. Maybe the patient did it in a moment of confusion. I didn't think much of it. Until the next day when I saw it again. Same spot, same crooked letters. My name. Just a few letters written in black ink, messy and careless. Grace. I didn't say anything. I thought maybe it was some kind of delusion. Maybe Thomas was trying to communicate, and in his state, that was the only way he knew how. Scribbling on walls like a child. I tried to brush it off, but something wouldn't let me settle. Why my name? How did he even know what my name was? I tried to forget it. But the next day, when I walked into Thomas's room again, the scribble was still there. This time it was bigger, darker, more obvious, like it demanded my attention. Grace. The letters were uneven, stretched across the wall in a way that made my heart race. The strokes looked desperate, like whoever had written them had been in a hurry, like it was urgent. I looked around the room. Thomas was sitting by the window, like always, staring outside, not reacting at all. It didn't make sense. He wasn't even looking at the wall. So, how had he written my name? And how did he know it? Thomas, I called gently, moving closer to the bed. He turned his head slowly, his dark eyes locked onto mine. There was something in his stare, something distant, but also intense. I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. "Why are you writing my name on the wall?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he smiled. It was a strange smile, unsettling, never reaching his eyes. Then in a low voice he said, "You'll know very soon." I don't know why, but those words sent a chill through my body. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid. I'd heard patients say strange things before, things that didn't make sense. But there was something in Thomas's voice that stayed with me, something that clung to my thoughts even after I left his room that day. The next shifts came one after another. I kept watching Thomas, not knowing what to think. The scribbles kept appearing on the wall. It wasn't just my name anymore. There were more words, more symbols, scratches in the paint, small messages that changed every day. Sometimes they were unreadable, a mess of letters and numbers with no meaning. But other times, they were too specific. I couldn't keep ignoring it. It felt like a riddle I had to solve. One night after an especially long shift, I walked into Thomas's room one more time. And there it was. The message was different this time. It wasn't just my name. It was a full sentence written with so much urgency that the ink had bled in some places. "You will be next." I froze in the doorway. My pulse spiked. Thomas was sitting in the same spot, his back to me. But something wasn't right. The room felt colder than usual. The lights flickered briefly. And then, like a signal, Thomas turned slowly toward me. His face was blank. But his eyes were wide open. Too wide. And that smile, it was still there. Like a mask. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why are you doing this?" His answer was a soft, icy whisper. "You'll know very soon." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I replayed his words over and over in my head. "You'll know very soon." They sounded like a warning, like I was about to become part of something I couldn't escape. I didn't know what to do. Was I overreacting? Was it just part of Thomas's illness? Or was something else happening? The next morning I arrived to start my shift, and everything had changed. The room felt different. The air was thick, almost suffocating. I approached the door, my hand hovering over the knob, unsure if I was ready for what I'd find inside. I opened the door. Thomas was gone. The room was empty. But that wasn't what took my breath away. What stopped me cold was the wall. The scribbles were gone. In their place was a single message, perfect, clear. "Grace, it's your turn." I don't know how long I stood there staring at it. I didn't know what to think. I didn't understand what it meant, but I could feel it. That same unsettling presence that had followed me through all those days. Something I couldn't shake. Something that had been there the whole time. I left the room, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight of the hospital fall on me in a way I couldn't ignore. The hallway felt longer, the air heavier. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I ever will. But I can't help wondering, was it a warning, or was it something much worse? All I know is that no matter where I go, no matter how far I run, I'll never forget the way Thomas looked at me that day. I'll never forget the way he said, "You'll know very soon."